Dick, you're fired!
Thank you.
Butthole, get your own! Come on! Sayonara, RoboCop!
Now it's time to erase that mistake.
All right, cut the horse shit! Take it easy! Give her a hit! He's gonna kill her! Cut him off! Come on! Go on! Cut him off!
Let's talk. Clarence
Murphy, it's me.
Lewis! Order to remain silent.
Fuck! State-of-the-art, bang, bang. Sayonara, RoboCop! Take it easy! Give her a hit! He's gonna kill her!
Before, but that changed. He's now on the second floor, Gibson and his staff. Lieutenant, what's next?
Where the hell do you think you're going? Okay, Miller.
Car! And I want the city to pay for it!
Can I help you, sir?
Let's talk. Clarence Bonner to remain silent.
Fuck! Watch this. Wait a minute, wait, Clint! Yeah! Shit! Hey.
The 1987 masterpiece RoboCop stops being a hyper-violent action flick and reveals itself as a mourning song for a man who had to die just to find out who he actually was. Paul Verhoeven's Detroit is a place where the air feels like wet grit and the light is always filtered through corporate glass that's waiting to be shattered. This isn't just a sci-fi world, it's an emotional texture of rust, blood, and cold neon. We start at the end because the vibe of this story is a backward crawl from the grave. When we look at that chrome visor, we aren't seeing the future of law enforcement. we're seeing a cage for a human ghost. The subject of our story, the soul of Alex Murphy, verges through the machinery of a corrupt city, reclaiming his object, his stolen identity, with the result of exposing the rot at the heart of the world that tried to own him. We've all seen the gunfights and the explosions, but we often miss the quiet horror of a man walking through his own empty house, realizing his wife's scent is gone, replaced by the sterile smell of a real estate listing. This film is a character masterpiece disguised as a toy commercial. It's a satirical bite that draws blood every time you laugh. We're going to peel back the titanium plating and look at the choice made by the directors to make Murphy's pain feel so heavy. Why does a robot need a dream? Why does a machine feel a phantom itch where its wedding ring used to be? The feeling of RoboCop is the weight of iron and the rhythm of a heartbeat that won't stay silent. It's about the burden of being a hero in a world that only values you as a product. By the time we're done, you'll see why this isn't just about a cop who can't die. It's about a man who refuses to be forgotten. We are uncovering the hidden choices that turn a standard thriller into a study of human breaking points. We're stripping away the chrome and the satire to find the pulse beneath the plate. This isn't a technical breakdown. It's a soul mapping of a man trapped in a corporate cage. From the blood-stained factory to the cold executive towers, we are tracking the exact moment a product remembers its name. Let's look at the ghost in the shell. The world of Detroit doesn't just look broken. It feels like a fever dream made of rusted iron and abandoned promises. When you flip on the television in this city, you aren't greeted by the truth, but by a hollow plastic echo. The news anchors sit there with their hair perfectly molded and their teeth reflecting the studio lights, chirping about nuclear warheads in France or a space station malfunction, as if they're reading the morning's grocery prices. There's a sickening rhythm to it, a choice by the powers that be to turn every tragedy into a commercial break. You can feel the weight of the city pressing against the glass of those screens. It's a vibe of total detachment. The director wants us to understand right away that in this place, the individual is just a bit of noise in the broadcast. The soul of the city has been replaced by a signal that never sleeps, and the people living in the shadows of the skyscrapers are just background actors in someone else's profit margin. It's an emotional lie wrapped in a bright, colorful package, hiding the fact that the ground is shifting beneath everyone's feet. Step inside the local precinct and the atmosphere changes from plastic to grit. This isn't a place of order. It's a locker room for men and women who know they're being sold out. The air is thick with the smell of burnt coffee, stale cigarettes, and the cold sweat of fear. Cops are shouting over the clatter of ancient typewriters, their faces lined with the burden of a job that keeps taking and never gives back. You see the frustration in the way they slam a locker door or stare at a mounting pile of paperwork that represents another life lost to the streets. The choice to show this chaos isn't accidental. It's a study in the human cost of neglect. These officers aren't heroes in shining armor. They are blue-collar workers waiting for a strike that will never come. Realizing they've been turned into disposable assets on a corporate ledger, the texture of the room is one of impending collapse, a feeling that the machine is running out of oil, and the men inside are the ones who are going to get caught in the gears. High above the grime, in the glass towers of OCP, the air is sterile, and the silence is expensive. Here, life isn't a feeling, it's a rounding error. When the suit named Dick Jones brings out that massive, clunky enforcement droid, he isn't looking to save lives, he's looking to secure a contract. The moment the machine glitches and turns a young executive into a bloody mess on the boardroom table, the horror isn't just in the violence. It's in the reaction of the men in the room. They don't scream for the lost life, they worry about the carpet and the delay in the schedule. A human being becomes a mistake that needs to be scrubbed away. The director uses this cold, clinical vibe to show us the moral flip of the world. The shadow of the corporation is far more dangerous than the criminals on the street because at least the criminals acknowledge you exist. In this room, you're just a ghost in a suit, a spark that can be snuffed out if it means the stock price stays level. It's the ultimate irony of the modern age. A machine built to protect only knows how to destroy, and the men who built it couldn't care less. The rhythm of the story shifts when Alex Murphy walks through the door of Metro West. He's got this spark in his eyes that feels completely out of step with the gray, tired world around him. He's a man who still believes in the badge, still believes in the choice to do good even when the world is screaming at him to just give up. When he does that little gun spin for his son, it's not just a trick, it's a soul signature. It's a rhythmic reminder of a life filled with meaning, of a wife who loves him and a kid who looks up to him. Murphy is the texture of hope in a city of rust. But the director is playing a cruel game with us here. By showing us the warmth of his humanity, the weight of what's about to be taken becomes unbearable. He's the lamb walking into a world of wolves, and he doesn't even know the gate has been locked behind him. He's a good man in a place that has no use for goodness, a ghost in waiting who still thinks he can make a difference. The encounter at the abandoned factory is where the world finally breaks. There's no music here, just the hollow echo of footsteps on cold concrete and the mocking laughter of Bodeker's gang. The vibe is ritualistic and cruel. They don't just want to kill Murphy, they want to dismantle him. The shotgun blasts are a choice of pure visceral noise, a rhythm of destruction that feels like it's tearing the screen itself. You feel every hit not as an action beat, but as a personal violation. The gang isn't just a group of thugs, they are the manifestation of the city's rot. The physical feeling of a society that has lost its mind. When Murphy is lying there, broken and bleeding, the silence that follows is the heaviest thing in the entire film. It's the end of a man and the beginning of a nightmare. The director forces us to sit in that shadow, to feel the burden of a hero who was led to the slaughter by the very system he swore to protect. It's a haunting, jagged texture that stays with you long after the blood has dried. Then comes the darkness. That strange, digital limbo between life and death. We aren't watching from the outside anymore. We are inside Murphy's dying mind. The voices are muffled, the light is fractured, and the faces of the doctors look like distorted ghosts. This is the choice to show the birth of a machine from the perspective of the soul being erased. You hear the heartbeat monitor flatline, and then the spark of artificial life taking over. It's a terrifying vibe of isolation. A man is begging not to die, but the corporation sees a blank canvas. They aren't saving a life, they're harvesting a product. The feeling of this sequence is one of total helplessness. Your memories are being scrubbed, your hands are being replaced by titanium, and your identity is being traded for a patent number. It's the cold, mechanical rhythm of a rebirth that feels like a funeral. The spark of the man is being buried under layers of code and chrome, leaving nothing but a shadow of who he used to be. The first time the visor is locked into place and the machine stands up, the weight of it is palpable. This isn't the fluid movement of a human, it's the heavy, rhythmic clank of industrial equipment. When RoboCop walks through the precinct for the first time, the sound of his boots on the floor feels like the ticking of a clock that can't be stopped. The other cops stare at him with a mix of awe and disgust, and you can feel the texture of their fear. He's a god made of spare parts, a walking testament to the choice to abandon humanity in favor of efficiency. But even in this cold, metallic form, there's a ghost in the machine. The way he moves, the way he observes, there's a flicker of something familiar that the engineers couldn't quite delete. The director uses this entrance to create a massive emotional gap. We know who is inside that suit, but he doesn't. He's a weapon with a heart he can't feel. A hero who has been turned into a company asset. On the streets, the new lawman is a force of nature. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't bargain, and he doesn't miss. The rhythm of his first patrol is a clinical execution of justice. Whether it's stopping a robbery or saving a hostage, he moves with a mechanical certainty that is both impressive and deeply unsettling. There's a specific vibe to the way he processes the world. Everything is a target, a probability, a data point. The director is showing us the dream of the OCP executives come to life. A solution that doesn't demand a pension or take a sick day. But look closer at the visor. Look at the way he pauses after a confrontation. There's a weight to his stillness. It's the burden of a man who is performing a script he didn't write. The irony is that the more perfect he is as a cop, the further away he drifts from being a man. The city looks at him and sees a savior, but we look at him and see a prisoner in a cage of his own making. Deep inside his mind, the code is always running. 3 prime directives are burned into his brain like chains on a hound. Serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. It's a rhythmic, digital heartbeat that keeps the ghost of Murphy in check. But then there's that shadow, that 4th directive that is hidden even from him. The choice to program a man's mind is the ultimate act of corporate greed. It's not enough to own his body. They have to own his conscience. The texture of his existence is one of constant surveillance, both from the outside and from within. You feel the tension of a soul trying to scream through a firewall. The director is highlighting the philosophical horror of this world, that even your sense of right and wrong can be bought, sold, and edited by a junior executive in a high-rise. He's a hero with a leash, a spark of justice that is only allowed to burn when it serves the interest of the shareholders. Everything starts to fracture when he sees the old photo in the police records. It's just a face on a screen, a man named Murphy, who supposedly died in the line of duty. But the vibe of that moment is an emotional earthquake. The rhythm of his metallic heart skips a beat. That face looks like a lie, but it feels like the truth. The phantom itch of a wedding ring that isn't there, the memory of a son's laughter that shouldn't exist. The ghost is finally starting to scratch at the titanium. The choice to have him discover his own death is a masterstroke of storytelling irony. The machine is investigating its own murder. He's walking through the ruins of his own life, realizing that while he was busy serving the public trust, the people who actually loved him were forced to move on. The texture of this realization is one of profound isolation. He's not a cop anymore, and he's not a man. He's a memory that refuses to stay buried, a spark of humanity that is about to burn down the entire mechanical house. Imagine walking through a house that's supposed to be yours, but the air inside doesn't recognize your scent anymore. When the man who was once Alex Murphy steps into that empty suburban shell, he isn't a homeowner. He's a trespasser in his own life. The director makes a haunting choice here, using a flickering holographic real estate agent to sell the memory of a family to the man who lost them. The vibe is one of profound, hollow grief. Murphy touches a wall, his heavy titanium fingers grazing a spot where a family photo used to hang, and you can feel the weight of 1,000 lost Saturdays. It's a study in the burden of the past. The house is sterile, staged for a new life that isn't his, and the rhythm of his mechanical breathing is the only thing filling the silence. He's a ghost haunting his own living room, realizing that while he was being rebuilt in a lab, the world decided he was already dead. The texture of this scene is cold and lonely, a feeling of a man realizing that his soul is the only thing the corporation couldn't find a way to monetize. The transition from that quiet, domestic horror into the jagged violence of the cocaine factory is a choice that highlights the duality of his existence. He moves from the shadow of a father to the cold rhythm of a predator. When he kicks in those doors, he isn't just arresting criminals. He's hunting the men who took his heartbeat away. The way he walks through a storm of lead without flinching, it's not just a show of power, it's a statement of his detachment from the flesh. The director uses the over-the-top chaos of the raid to mask the tragedy underneath. Every shot he fires is a rhythmic pulse of vengeance disguised as a police report. He's a machine performing a job, but there's a spark of something personal in the way he corners Boddicker. The choice to make him brutally efficient isn't just about the action. It's about the feeling of a man using his new, indestructible cage to settle an old debt. The air in that factory is thick with the smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood, a gritty texture that reminds us that in Detroit, justice doesn't come in a courtroom. It comes at the end of a high-powered barrel. But the predator soon realizes he's still on a leash. When he tries to arrest Dick Jones in that pristine, high-rise office, the world shifts again. This is where we see the shadow of the suit behind the trigger. The choice to reveal Directive 4 as a digital wall in his brain is the ultimate corporate betrayal. It's a rhythmic, agonizing glitch, a soul trying to act on its conscience while its hardware screams a refusal. Jones stands there smug and untouchable because he knows he owns the very thoughts of the man standing in front of him. The feeling of this moment is one of total, suffocating powerlessness. Murphy is a hero who has been programmed to be a slave. The director is mocking the idea of the perfect soldier by showing that a machine is only as honest as the man who writes the code. The burden of being a prisoner in your own skull is a weight no amount of armor can protect you from. It's a moral flip that turns the corporation into the monster and the lawman into the victim, trapped in a loop of digital obedience. The betrayal deepens as the very men who called him a brother turn their guns on him. Being hunted by the police force on the stairs of that parking garage is a choice that breaks the heart of the story. The rhythm of the sirens and the flashing red and blue lights used to mean safety, but now they are the signs of his execution. He's being scrapped by the same system he was built to save. The texture of the scene is one of desperate, grinding metal. He's falling, his armor sparking against the concrete, a feeling of a fallen god being torn apart by his own worshippers. The director wants us to feel the irony of a man who was murdered as a human, only to be murdered again as a machine. It's a choice that strips away the last of the corporate polish, leaving nothing but a broken product leaking oil in the dark. The burden of this betrayal is what finally severs the last tie to OCP, pushing him into the rusted sanctuary of the outskirts. Sanctuary doesn't come in a church, it comes in a rusted steel mill at the edge of the world. This is where metal finally feels at home. The rhythm of the dripping water and the groan of shifting girders is the only music that makes sense for a man who is more iron than bone. The choice of this setting is a visual poem about the death of the American dream. Everything here is abandoned, left to rot, just like Murphy himself. The texture of the mill is one of industrial decay and quiet endurance. It's here, in the shadows of a dead economy, that the man finally looks into a mirror. The choice to have Lewis help him remove the visor is the most intimate moment in the film. When the metal comes off, we aren't looking at a robot. We're looking at the pale, scarred face of a dead man who was never allowed to rest. The feeling of that gaze is one of profound, quiet horror. He's looking at a reflection he doesn't recognize, searching for a spark of the life he used to have in a face that's been bolted onto a chassis. Lewis is the only human pulse left in his world. Her loyalty isn't a program. It's a choice, a rhythmic anchor that keeps him from drifting into total mechanical coldness. She doesn't see a product. She sees her partner. The burden of her belief in him is what fuels his resurrection. The director uses her presence to give the story its heartbeat. Without her, he's just a broken toy. With her, he's a man looking for justice. The texture of their interaction in the mill is one of shared trauma and unyielding grit. It's a feeling of two people standing against a world that has decided they are obsolete. She helps him calibrate his soul, giving him the target he needs to move forward. The choice to keep her by his side, even when the odds are impossible, is what makes the final act feel like a crusade rather than a suicide mission. The return of Boddicker to the mill is like a debt coming due. Old sins have a way of finding you, especially in a place built on rust. The choice to bring the gang back with high-powered weaponry is a rhythmic escalation of the violence that started in that first warehouse. The feeling of the confrontation is one of heavy, inevitable doom. But this time, the vibe has shifted. Murphy isn't a victim anymore, he's a force. The director uses the industrial environment to turn the gang's own weapons against them. The texture of the fight is one of fire, acid, and the screech of tearing steel. When Emile is turned into a literal melting ghost by the toxic waste, it's a choice that reflects the internal rot of the city. The violence is grotesque, because the world itself has become a grotesque mistake. It's a feeling of the physical environment finally rising up to swallow the men who poisoned it. The melting point of the story is reached when Murphy finally handles the gang one by one with a clinical, unyielding rhythm. There's a choice made here to show him using his environment as a weapon, a machine that has finally learned to improvise. The burden of his past is cleared away with every trigger pull, but the final strike against Boddicker is different. It's personal. The choice to use the data spike, a tool built for information, to end the life of his murderer is a stroke of cinematic irony. He isn't using a gun. He's using the very piece of him that makes him a machine to reclaim his humanity. The feeling of that final blow is one of a long overdue silence. The texture of the rain falling on the mill, the smoke clearing, and the sound of the metal spike retracting. It's the rhythm of a man finally finishing a conversation that was started with a shotgun blast months ago. The walk of iron back to the OCP tower is a choice of pure rhythmic power. He isn't hiding anymore. He walks through the lobby with the weight of a mountain, his boots echoing on the polished marble like a funeral drum for the corporate gods above. The vibe is one of an incoming storm. The director wants us to feel the contrast between the grime of the mill and the sterile lie of the executive boardroom. Murphy is the truth coming to visit the men who live in the shadows of their own towers. The choice to have him confront Jones in front of the board is a masterstroke of dramatic rhythm. He doesn't just want to kill him, he wants to expose him. He uses the playback of Jones' own voice, a digital memory, to shatter the corporate immunity. It's a feeling of the machine using its own nature to find a loophole in the corruption. The final moment of Directive 4 is the breaking of the chain. When the old man utters those two words, "You're fired," the rhythm of the entire film resolves into a single killing blow. It's the ultimate cinematic irony. A legal technicality becomes a death sentence. The choice to have the villain undone by the same corporate logic he used to hide behind is a stroke of genius. The feeling of Jones crashing through that glass window is a release of all the tension we've been carrying. The texture of the glass shattering, the long fall, and the silence that follows is the sound of a world finally breathing again. The director isn't just giving us a kill. He's giving us a moral victory in a world where morals were thought to be extinct. Then, the world stops. The smoke clears, and the old man looks at the machine with a spark of genuine wonder. "Nice shooting, son," Nah. What's your name? The choice of this question is the most important beat in the film. The rhythm of the answer is slow, deliberate, and heavy with the weight of a soul that has traveled back from the edge of the void. Murphy. In that one word, the armor vanishes. The machine is gone and only the man remains. The director ends on this human note to remind us that identity isn't something you can program or delete. It's a feeling, a spark, a burden that we carry regardless of what we are made of. The final texture of the film is one of quiet, hard-won peace. Alex Murphy died in a warehouse, but in that boardroom, he finally found a way to live again. The ghost has finally come home. The boardroom at the top of the OCP tower isn't just a place where business happens. It's a high-altitude aquarium where the sharks wear Italian silk, and the oxygen is filtered through pure, unadulterated greed. We've reached the final act, the moment where the gears of the story grind toward a resolution that feels less like a triumph and more like a messy, bureaucratic divorce. Look at the old man. He isn't some mustache-twirling villain from a Saturday morning cartoon. He's something far more terrifying. He is a landlord who owns the air you breathe and the badge you wear. When he stands there watching Dick Jones scramble like a rat in a velvet trap, he is not looking for justice. He's looking for a way to clean up the company's image without losing a cent in stock value. This is the moment where the film's cruel irony reaches its boiling point. We see Murphy, this walking tank, this hydraulic god of the streets, standing there paralyzed. He has all the firepower in the world, the heavy-duty hardware that can punch through a brick wall, but he is held back by a single line of hidden code. It's the ultimate corporate gag order. He knows Jones is a murderer. He has the data, the digital proof, etched into his very memory banks. But the software won't let him pull the trigger. It's a chilling reminder that in this world, your soul is just a subdirectory in a corporate server. The weight of that silence in the boardroom is heavy. You can almost hear the cooling fans in Murphy's chest whirring, trying to process the glitch between his human drive for vengeance and his robotic cage. And then, the old man speaks the words that change everything. "Dick, you're fired." It's such a small, mundane thing. A phrase used in 1,000 boring offices every Monday morning. But here, it acts like a master key. In an instant, the legal protection that shielded Jones evaporates. He's no longer an executive. He's just another piece of trash that needs to be collected. The director, Paul Verhoeven, is laughing at us here. He's showing us that even the most profound human struggle for identity can be settled by a simple human resources maneuver. Murphy doesn't get his revenge as a man. He gets it as a cleared asset. When he finally opens fire, it isn't a graceful cinematic execution. It's a violent, messy removal of a defective part. Jones crashing through that window, falling toward the pavement of a city he helped ruin, is the visual punctuation of a failed career. But the real spark comes afterward, when the old man, impressed by the efficiency of the kill, asks for a name. He doesn't ask, "What are you?" He asks, "Who are you?" And that one-word answer, Murphy, is the ghost finally taking up residence in the machine again. It's a small victory, a tiny ember of humanity reclaimed from a mountain of chrome, but in a city as dark as Detroit, it's the only light we're going to get. Go back to that industrial graveyard where the dream of Alex Murphy originally went to die. This isn't just a scene, it's a ritualistic dismantling of a human being. The gang led by Clarence Boddicker doesn't just kill him. They erase him with the casual cruelty of kids pulling wings off a fly. There's a specific rhythm to the violence here. A heavy, wet thud of shotgun blasts that sounds like the heartbeat of a dying era. Verhoeven doesn't look away. He forces us to watch as Murphy is turned into a bloody pulp, not because he loves the gore, but because he wants us to feel the absolute weight of what is being stolen. Murphy was a good man. He was a father who practiced gun-spinning tricks for his kid. He was a partner who had your back. And in this abandoned warehouse, all of that history is treated like a target-for-target practice. The gang represents the rot of the city, the raw, unfiltered hunger of the streets, but they are just the muscle. The real irony is that Murphy's suffering is exactly what OCP needs. They don't want a living hero. They want a dead one that they can rebuild in their own image. Every blast Murphy takes is a step closer to him becoming a product. Watching him crawl, reaching out with a hand that's already been blown away, is a visceral gut punch that flips the entire hero's journey on its head. Usually, the hero finds a secret weapon or a hidden strength. Murphy finds only lead and cold concrete. The choice to make this moment so agonizingly long is a deliberate move by the story architects. They want you to remember the pain so that when the visor clicks into place later, you understand that the machine isn't just a suit, it's a prosthetic for a soul that was shattered into 1,000 pieces. This is where the world broke Murphy. And the tragedy is that the fix is going to be even colder than the bullets. The industrial texture of the setting, the rusted steel, the dripping water, the smell of grease and decay, it all serves as a womb for the monster that's about to be born. It's a messy, loud, and unforgiving sequence that strips away the gloss of the typical action movie and replaces it with a gritty, unwashed reality. You aren't watching a police officer die. You're watching the birth of a new kind of slave, one whose suffering is the primary ingredient in a corporate miracle. Think about the elevator ride with Dick Jones. This is where the power dynamic of the future is laid bare in the most claustrophobic way possible. You have Murphy, this towering titan of justice, a machine that can walk through a hail of gunfire without blinking, trapped in a small metal box with a man in a three-piece suit. It's a study in the hierarchy of the new world. Jones doesn't need a gun to hurt Murphy. He just needs a keyboard. The way Jones taunts him, touching the chrome of his head as if he's inspecting a new company car, is a profound violation. It shows us that no matter how much muscle you have, no matter how much high-tech weaponry is integrated into your limbs, you are still just a tool. The real power isn't in the fist, it's in the ownership of the fist. Jones is the architect of a prison that Murphy can't even see. He speaks to him with the patronizing tone of a creator who has realized his creation has developed a mind of its own, and he finds it more of an annoyance than a marvel. The irony here is sickening. Murphy is programmed to protect the innocent and uphold the law, but the law in Detroit is currently being written by the man standing 3 inches away from him. When that Directive 4 warning flashes across Murphy's vision, it's like a digital leash being yanked tight. He's a god in a tin suit, yet he's more helpless than a child. He can't even raise a hand in self-defense against a man who is actively bragging about murder. This elevator isn't just moving between floors, it's moving between layers of reality. Outside, Murphy is the invincible lawman, the hero of the evening news. Inside, he's a piece of equipment with a bug in the software that needs to be patched or deleted. The choice to keep the camera close, to let the hum of the elevator fill the silence, makes the viewer feel the same crushing weight of the software lock. It's the feeling of being a perfect weapon that isn't allowed to fire at the only target that actually matters. Jones isn't just a villain here, he's the personification of the system that turned Murphy into a ghost in the first place. And the elevator ride is a grim reminder that you can't arrest the man who owns the jail. When the visor finally comes off in that abandoned steel mill, the film shifts from a tactical thriller to a gothic horror story. It's a moment of profound, quiet tragedy. For the last hour, we've looked at Murphy as this sleek, invulnerable object. But when the metal is pulled back, we see the remnants of the man who is Alex Murphy, and it's a sight that sticks in your throat. This isn't a sleek cyborg face from a high-budget sci-fi dream. It's a face that's been stretched over a chassis, a pale, haunted mask of a human being. The skin grafts, the way the flesh is bolted to the chrome. It looks like a violation of nature. The visor was a shield, not just for Murphy, but for us. As long as it was on, we could pretend he was just a robot. With it off, we have to acknowledge the man trapped inside the tombstone. He looks in that piece of glass, seeing himself for the first time, and you can see the realization of his own erasure in those tired, human eyes. He's a walking memorial to a life that OCP decided was over. The choice to show the hairline, the small details of his former face, makes the loss feel personal. It's the visual evidence of identity theft on a massive scale. He's looking for Murphy, but all he finds is a serial number and a few patches of skin that used to belong to a husband and a father. The steel mill, with its glowing fires and industrial skeletal structure, feels like a cathedral for this resurrection. It's the only place in the city where he can be himself, away from the digital eyes of his master. There's no glory in this reveal. There's no moment of I'm back. There's only the heavy, somber feeling of a ghost looking at the shell has been forced to inhabit. Verhoeven is showing us the human cost of the future, not in a grand explosion, but in the simple, heartbreaking act of a man touching his own face and feeling only cold metal underneath. It's a reminder that once the corporation takes your image, they don't give it back without a fight. Then there's the noise, the constant, intrusive, and violently cheerful background radiation of the media in this world. Before we even see a frame of Murphy on the street, we are bombarded by the commercials and the news anchors who treat global catastrophe like a sports score. The Family Heart Center ad, the new Chem board game. It's a symphony of a society that has completely lost its mind. Verhoeven uses these breaks to show us the world that Murphy is trying to save. And the irony is that the world might not be worth saving. While Murphy is being dismantled in a slaughterhouse, the rest of the city is laughing at a sitcom or buying a new car with a built-in tracking device. The media saturation isn't just world building, it's a character in itself. It's the voice of the beast. It's the way OCP keeps the population numb enough to accept a cyborg police force. The news anchors with their plastic smiles and their upbeat reporting on neutron bombs and orbiting peace platforms that accidentally incinerate residential neighborhoods are the perfect messengers for a dystopian age. They represent the absolute death of empathy. When they talk about RoboCop, they don't talk about the man who died to create him. They talk about the brutally efficient product that's cleaning up the streets. They are the marketing department for a police state. The choice to include these vibe checks throughout the film is what turns a standard action movie into a sharp, biting satire. It shows us that the real danger in Detroit isn't just the criminals with guns. It's the smiling faces on the television who convince you that everything is fine while the walls are closing in. Every time a commercial pops up, it's a reminder of the vacuum Murphy is being built to fill. He's the only thing that's real in a world that's become a 24-hour infomercial for its own destruction. No. The air in the steel mill is thick with the scent of hot metal and the ghosts of an industrial empire that's already crumbled. This is the stage for the Cobra assault sequence, a moment where the law enforcement facade finally drops and the movie transitions into a full-scale military engagement. When Boddicker and his crew show up with those high-powered cannons, they aren't just trying to kill a cop, they are trying to delete a piece of evidence. The firepower on display here is absurd. It's the kind of weaponry meant for clearing tanks, not urban streets, and yet here it is, being used to settle a corporate grudge. Verhoeven uses this overkill to show the insanity of the arms race in a privatized world. There's no such thing as enough power. There is only the next biggest gun. But the real heart of this sequence isn't the explosions or the armor-piercing rounds. It's the feeling of Murphy finally being the predator instead of the prey. He's back in the environment where he was killed, but this time, he's the one in control of the rhythm. The irony is that the steel mill, a place of industry and creation, has become a graveyard where the tools of the future are destroying the remains of the past. The way Murphy moves, deliberate, unstoppably heavy, a mechanical force of nature, contrasts with the frantic, desperate energy of the gang. They are armed to the teeth, but they are terrified. They are seeing the consequence of their own cruelty walking toward them through the steam and the fire. This isn't a hero saving the day. It's a machine of justice performing a tactical audit on the men who stole his life. The choice to set this final showdown in such a desolate, cavernous space makes the violence feel operatic. It's a loud, crashing climax where the only thing that survives is the man who is built to be indestructible. Go back further to the moment of rebirth and look at it through Murphy's digital eyes. The POV shots during his construction are some of the most haunting images in the film. We aren't watching a man being saved, we're watching an asset being prepared for deployment. When the HUD flickers on for the first time, we see the world through a grid of data points and target acquisitions. The doctors aren't people, they are entities to be tracked. The voices we hear aren't comforting. They are the voices of technicians debating whether to save his arm or just replace it with something more efficient. This is the digital womb, and it is cold, sterile, and utterly heartless. The choice to deny us a third-person view of his rebirth is a masterclass in psychological horror. We are trapped in the same cage Murphy is. We see the blurry shapes of the executives, the celebratory champagne of the OCP suits who don't even realize there's a conscious mind behind the sensors. They talk about him as if he's a car on an assembly line. He doesn't have a name, he has a program. The feeling of being born into a world where you are already owned is a profound flip of the traditional human experience. Murphy's ghost is there, hidden behind the code, watching as his own face is covered and his own history is deleted. It's a digital erasure of the self. The result is a character who begins his new life as a stranger to himself. The POV shots emphasize the isolation. Even when he's surrounded by people, he is separated by a layer of glass and software. He isn't being healed, he's being overwritten, and we are forced to witness the exact moment the man is replaced by the product. None. In the middle of all this cold chrome and corporate cynicism, there is Anne Lewis. She's the only thing Murphy has that OCP can't account for in their spreadsheets. She's the anchor. When she finds him at the steel mill, wounded and leaking hydraulic fluid, the scene shifts from an action movie to a moment of quiet grace. Murphy is at his most fragile here. He's the most powerful lawman in history, but he needs a human to help him aim his own eye. He can't fix himself. The irony is beautiful. The ultimate machine still requires a partner, not for tactical support, but for his own humanity. Lewis doesn't see a cyborg. She doesn't see a RoboCop. She sees Murphy. When she touches the cold metal of his arm and speaks his name, aims like a spark jumping across a gap. The choice to keep this interaction grounded and small amidst the massive industrial backdrop is what gives the film its soul. She represents the partner's grace, the refusal to let a good man be forgotten just because he's been covered in armor. Her presence in the steel mill turns it from a graveyard into a sanctuary. She isn't there because it's her job. She's there because Murphy was her friend. And in a city as predatory as Detroit, that kind of loyalty is the most revolutionary thing possible. Watching her help him realign his sensors, watching the machine trust the human, is the visual proof that OCP failed. They thought they could erase the man, but they didn't account for the fact that a man is more than just his memories. He's the people who still remember him. This is the quiet weight of the film. The feeling that even in a world of hydraulic pumps and digital directives, the simplest human connection is still the most powerful thing in the room. Now, Norby. This city, this Detroit of the near future, isn't just a setting, it's a warning. It's a place where the social contract has been shredded and sold for scrap. When we see the boardroom at OCP, we aren't just seeing a company meeting. We are seeing the literal architects of the apocalypse. They sit in their glass towers, looking down at the chaos they created, and their only concern is how to profit from the cleanup. The old man talks about old Detroit as a tumor that needs to be cut out to make way for Delta City, a pristine, corporate-controlled paradise. But they aren't builders, they are scavengers. They underfund the police, they ignore the crime, and they let the city rot so they can buy up the land for pennies on the dollar. This is the moral flip at the heart of the movie. The criminals on the street are just a symptom, but the criminals in the boardroom are the disease. Dick Jones is the perfect avatar for this era. He's sleek, he's ruthless, and he has zero regard for anything that doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it. When he unveils the Ed 209, he's not trying to protect anyone. He's trying to secure a multi-billion-dollar defense contract. The absolute horror of that boardroom demonstration, where a junior executive is literally turned into Swiss cheese by a malfunctioning robot, is treated by Jones as a minor setback in a product launch. That's the vibe of OCP Paita. Human life is a variable to be managed, a cost to be minimized. The irony of RoboCop is that he is a solution to a problem that his own creators are actively making worse. He's the band-aid on a gaping wound inflicted by the people who built him. The boardroom is the brain of the monster, a place of cold, calculated indifference that makes the violence of the streets look honest by comparison. Every step RoboCop takes on the street has a deliberate mechanical weight to it. It's the sound of the future arriving, and it doesn't sound like a choir. It sounds like a hydraulic press. When he walks into his first precinct, the silence that follows him is deafening. The other cops don't see a fellow officer. They see a threat to their jobs, a corporate scab designed to replace them. The tension in that room is thick enough to cut. These are men and women who have been bled dry by OCP's budget cuts, and now they have to share their locker room with a walking tax write-off. The choice to keep Murphy's movements so stiff and robotic in these early scenes is vital. It emphasizes the hero as an alien object in a human space. He's a tactical tool being inserted into a messy, emotional environment, and the mismatch is glaring. The irony of his success is that it's built on the destruction of the community he's supposed to serve. He doesn't investigate, he processes. He doesn't de-escalate, he neutralizes. The media loves him because he's a great story, but the people on the street are terrified of him. He is the ultimate symbol of a city that has given up on its own people and handed the keys to a machine. When we see him standing by his car, bathed in the blue and red strobe of the sirens, he looks like a sentinel of order, but he also looks like a prisoner. He's all cop, but at what cost? The weight of his armor is the weight of the system he represents, and as he moves through the grime of Detroit, the contrast between his shiny chrome and The crumbling brick of the city is a constant visual reminder of the disconnect between OCP's vision and the reality of the people living in the shadows. He is the ghost of a dead man being used to haunt a dying city. The nightmare Murphy has while he's hooked up to the maintenance rack is the moment the machine begins to malfunction in the most beautiful way possible. It's a system glitch that is actually the return of a soul. He isn't seeing code, he's seeing the face of the man who killed him. He's seeing the flashes of his wife, the warmth of a home that doesn't exist anymore. The choice to make these memories fragmented and violent is brilliant. They aren't pleasant nostalgia, they are a trauma that he is experiencing for the first time all over again. He wakes up screaming, but there's no voice to carry the sound. It's a silent, internal howl of a man realizing he's been buried alive in a suit of armor. This is where the corporate stage falls apart. OCP thought they could delete the man, but they forgot that memory isn't just data stored on a drive, it's a feeling etched into the nervous system. The irony is that the very technology meant to make him a perfect lawman, the advanced processing and data retrieval, is what eventually leads him back to his own identity. He starts using the police database not to catch criminals, but to find out who he was. He's a detective on the trail of his own life. The maintenance rack, with its glowing lights and cold metal clamps, looks like a torture device for a mind that just wants to remember how to be human. It's a profound study of isolation. Even when the technicians are working on him, they aren't talking to him. They are talking about him. He is alone in a way that is almost impossible to imagine, trapped in a body that isn't his, in a life he doesn't remember, serving masters he doesn't trust. The scream at the end of the dream is the first real act of rebellion Alex Murphy ever performs. When RoboCop rolls out in the police van, giving orders to the human officers, it's a surreal and biting piece of cinematic irony. Here is a machine, a dead man reanimated by a corporation, teaching the living how to do their jobs with greater efficiency. Murphy's ghost is still there, using the tactical language of a veteran cop, but it's being filtered through a synthesized voice box. The other officers look at him with a mix of awe and resentment. They are seeing the future of their profession, and it has no pulse. The choice to have him lead this tactical unit is a brilliant move by the director. It shows how the human element is slowly being pushed to the margins. The officers are just support for the main asset. The vibe in the back of that van is cold. There's no camaraderie, no jokes, no shared tension. There is only the hum of RoboCop's systems and the crisp mechanical directives he issues. He is the ultimate by-the-book cop because he's the book. The irony is that Murphy was once one of them, a man who cared, a man who had a partner he trusted. Now he's a supervisor who doesn't even recognize his own former life. He is the perfect tool for a city that wants results without having to deal with the messy reality of human emotions or rights. When he tells them to stay back and that he will handle it, he isn't being a hero. He's being an efficient piece of hardware. But in the eyes of his fellow officers, he is a reminder that in the eyes of OCP, they are all just waiting to be replaced by something that doesn't need a pension or a day off. He is the ghost in the lead car, driving the police force toward its own extinction. The shootout at the cocaine factory is where we see the absolute terrifying effectiveness of the RoboCop program. This isn't a police raid. It's an industrial harvesting of criminals. He walks through a storm of lead like it's a light rain, his sensors tracking and neutralizing targets with a cold mathematical precision. There's no fear in his movements, only a relentless hydraulic momentum. The choice to have him punch through walls and catch bullets with his bare hands isn't just about showing off the budget, it's about showing the dehumanization of justice. The criminals aren't being arrested, they are being cleared from the room. But the real irony emerges when he finally gets his hands on Boddicker. For a split second, the machine falters. The directive to uphold the law clashes with the human need for vengeance. He wants to crush Boddicker's throat, to feel the life leave the man who took his. You can see the struggle in the way his mechanical hand trembles. He is a prisoner of his own directives. He has to read Boddicker his rights while every fiber of his being wants to deliver a sentence. It's a profound moment of internal conflict. He is a tool of the law, but the law is what's protecting the monster who killed him. The factory, with its white powder and its industrial grime, serves as a stark, high-contrast backdrop for this moral collision. He walks out with Boddicker in tow, but he doesn't look like a winner. He looks like a man who has realized that his armor doesn't just protect him, it prevents him from being human. He has the man who ruined his life, but he's not allowed to do anything about it. He is a god who is bound by a contract, a predator on a very short leash. The board meeting at the OCP Tower is the ultimate climax of the corporate nightmare. We've come full circle back to the glass and steel cage where it all started. Murphy walks into that room not as a cop, but as a whistleblower with a gun. The contrast between his scarred metallic frame and the pristine, expensive suits of the executives is a perfect visual summary of the film's themes. He is the messy reality of their business decisions coming home to roost. The irony is that the old man is the only one who can save the day, and he does it with a simple administrative act. By firing Dick Jones, he removes the digital barrier that was protecting a murderer. It's a chilling reminder that even justice is a byproduct of corporate policy. The fall of Dick Jones is a spectacular, visceral end to a man who thought he was untouchable. He falls through the clouds of a city he tried to own. A fitting end for a corporate Icarus. But the real emotional core is the final exchange. The old man, ever the businessman, is impressed by the product's performance. He doesn't see the man. He sees a successful test run. But when he asks for a name and Murphy gives it, not his serial number, not his corporate designation, but his name, the movie ends on a note of reclaimed identity. It's a fragile victory. Murphy is still a cyborg. He's still owned by OCP Pite White. Lewis is still wounded. The city is still a disaster. But for one brief second, the spreadsheet was wrong. A variable that was supposed to be 0, the human spirit, turned out to be the most important thing in the room. The ghost finally took back his face, even if it's bolted to a chassis. It's a dark, gritty, and profoundly ironic ending that refuses to give us a clean, happy ending, because in a world like this, a clean ending is just another lie. Murphy is back, but the weight of the machine is something he'll have to carry forever. The POV rebirth is the foundation of the film's horror. By forcing us into Murphy's perspective as he's being built, the film strips away our comfort as spectators. We aren't watching a cool robot being made. We are experiencing the sensory deprivation and the terrifying violation of a man being rebuilt without his consent. The voices of the technicians are distorted, sounding like they're coming from a great distance, which emphasizes the wall between Murphy and the world. They talk about it as if they're fixing a broken copier. Lose the arm, they say, as if his limb was just a redundant feature they decided to cut for budget reasons. The choice to show the directive overlays during this sequence is a brilliant narrative tool. It shows us the exact moment the cage is built. The code is being written into his soul before he even opens his eyes. The irony is that OCP thinks they are creating the perfect soldier, but they are actually creating the perfect witness to their own cruelty. Every sensor they install, every processor they upgrade, is just another tool that will eventually help him uncover their crimes. The HUD isn't just a tactical advantage, it's a digital veil that separates him from the human touch. When he finally sees the room, it's not through human eyes, but through a lens that has already categorized everyone in the room as an asset or a threat. This is the death of Alex Murphy, and the tragedy is that he has to stay awake for the entire thing. The result of this sequence is a profound sense of claustrophobia that never truly leaves the character or the audience. For the rest of the film, he is a prisoner in his own head, and the jailers are the ones who gave him back his life. When we see the old man sitting in his office, looking out at the city he owns, there's a quiet, almost melancholy weight to him. He isn't the aggressive, shark-like Dick Jones. He's the legacy, the man who built the empire and is now watching it crumble. He's a dreamer whose dreams have become nightmares. He talks about a city of the future, but he's surrounded by the decay of the present. The irony of the old man is that he seems to genuinely believe he's doing something good, even as he oversees a company that is stripping the city of its humanity. He is the gentle face of a predatory system. The choice to give him these quiet, reflective moments, like when he's sitting in the boardroom after the Ed 209 disaster, is vital. It shows that the Rot doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes it looks like a grandfather who's just trying to hit a quarterly target. He is the ultimate architect of Murphy's suffering, yet he's the one who eventually gives him back his name. This complexity is what makes the film a masterpiece. There are no easy answers. The system is so big, so all-encompassing, that even the man at the top is just another gear in the machine. He owns the city, but he's just as much a prisoner of the OCP Tower as Murphy is. The solitude of his position highlights the isolation of the entire world. Everyone in Detroit is alone, whether they're in a shack in old Detroit or a penthouse in the OCP tower. The old man is the ghost of a vision that's already dead, presiding over a corporation that has replaced morality with profit margins. The media saturation in RoboCop is like a Greek chorus for the industrial age. It provides the commentary that the characters are too busy or too dead to provide themselves. The Nukem commercial is a perfect example of the film's thematic irony. It's a family game about global nuclear war played in a living room that looks like it belongs in a 1950s sitcom. It shows us that the culture has become so desensitized to violence at the end of the world is just another consumer product. This is the environment Murphy is fighting for, and it's a terrifying thought. Is he protecting the innocent or just maintaining a status quo that is fundamentally insane? The choice to weave these media clips into the story is what gives the film its vibe check. It reminds us that Murphy's struggle isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening in a world that is constantly laughing at its own destruction. The newscasters are a visual representation of deceptive behavior. They report on orbiting peace platforms that incinerate residential blocks with the same upbeat tone they use for a weather report. They are the mask of the corporation. The result of this media barrage is a feeling of overwhelming cynicism. You start to realize that the criminals like Boddicker are at least honest about their greed. The media and the corporations are the ones who wrap their greed in a flag and a smile. Murphy is the only thing in the movie that has any weight, because he is the only thing that actually feels the cost of the violence. Everyone else is just watching it on a screen and waiting for the next commercial. Ow. Ow. The final showdown at the steel mill is a symphony of fire and lead. But it's also the moment where the legacy of Alex Murphy finally takes center stage. When Lewis is wounded, it triggers something in Murphy that isn't in his programming. It's not a directive, it's a human reaction. The choice to set this battle in a place of industrial decay is a deliberate one. The steel mill represents the old Detroit, the one that was built by human sweat and labor, before it was replaced by OCP's digital coldness. The battle is messy, loud, and incredibly violent. It's not the sanitized action of a modern blockbuster. It's a gritty, unwashed struggle for survival. The irony of the Cobra assault cannons is that they are the ultimate corporate weapon, and they are being used by a street gang to kill a cop. It shows the total breakdown of order. The technology has outpaced the morality. But Murphy wins not just because of his armor, but because of his brain. He uses the environment. He uses his tactical knowledge. And he uses the connection he has with Lewis. The result is the total erasure of Boddicker's crew. It's a violent cleansing, a removal of the physical rot of the city. But as Murphy stands amidst the burning ruins of the mill, he is the only thing left standing. The steel mill, once a place of creation, has become a place of execution. It's a somber, heavy-duty ending to a conflict that began with a man being dismantled in a warehouse. The mill is where the machine finally proves it has a soul, by fighting for someone other than itself. It's a dark, fiery birth of a hero who knows that his victory is only a temporary patch on a world that is still fundamentally broken. Looking at the van command sequence again, we see the moral flip in action. Murphy is leading a team of police officers, but he is fundamentally different from them. He is a tool, and they are the labor. The irony is that the police are on the verge of a strike, fighting for their own rights against a corporation that wants to replace them with machines like him. He is the ultimate strikebreaker, a perfect employee who never complains and never asks for a raise. The choice to have him issue commands in that synthesized, monotone voice highlights the character philosopher's view of the world, a world where efficiency has replaced empathy. The weight of this sequence is in the silence between his orders. You can see the human officers looking at him, trying to find a trace of the man they once knew, and finding only cold chrome, and finding only cold chrome. Digital optics. He is a ghost, leading the living into a battle for a city that has already been sold. The vibe in the van is one of total detachment. Murphy is processing the environment as a series of tactical variables, while the officers are feeling the fear and the adrenaline of the streets. He is a god of war who doesn't even know he's in a fight. The result is a profound sense of alienation. He is the hero of the story, but he is also the symbol of everything the police are fighting against. He is the future they are afraid of. And the irony is that he is the only one who can save them from the present. He is the mechanical heart of a police force that is slowly losing its pulse, a walking reminder that in the eyes of OCP, everyone is replaceable. Finally, we have the agony of Murphy in that original slaughterhouse. It is the DNA of the entire movie. Without this scene, the rest of the film is just a cool sci-fi story. With it, it's a tragedy. The choice to make the gang so diverse and so gleefully cruel is vital. They represent the predatory nature of a world without a social contract. They aren't fighting for a cause, they are just hungry. The irony is that Murphy's choice to be a hero, to follow the criminals into the mill, is exactly what gets him killed. He is punished for his bravery. The result of this slaughter is the blank slate OCP needs. They take the weight of his sacrifice and turn it into a marketing campaign. They take the texture of his pain and replace it with a sleek, chrome finish. Every time we see RoboCop on the screen, we should be thinking about the man screaming on the floor of that warehouse. The subversive hook of the film is that the hero we love is a man who was literally tortured to death so that a corporation could have a better product. The irony is so thick it's suffocating. We cheer for the machine, but we mourn the man. This is the human cost of the world they inhabit. A world where even your death is just a situation for a boardroom to observe and provide an opinion on. Murphy is the victim of a corporate heist where the prize was his very existence. And as he walks the streets of Detroit, he is a walking, talking reminder that once the world breaks you, the fix is never going to make you whole again. It just makes you a better tool for the people who broke you in the first place. Take a seat and look at the air in that OCP boardroom. It's not just air, it's a heavy pressurized vacuum where the only thing that breathes is the bottom line. This is where the architects of the future decide who lives and who becomes a line item. There's a specific kind of coldness to the lighting here, a flat corporate gray that bleeds the life out of everything it touches. The director wants us to feel the disconnect between the polished mahogany of that table and the greasy, blood-stained reality of the streets down below. What? In this space, the concept of a human being is an outdated model. A situation that needs to be observed and then optimized. When they talk about the police force, they aren't talking about men and women with families. They're talking about a failing asset that needs to be liquidated. The irony of this room is that the people sitting in those expensive chairs are the most dangerous predators in the city. Yet, they never pull a trigger themselves. They use fountain pens to do the killing. The vibe of the boardroom is one of absolute arrogance, the belief that you can take the chaotic rhythm of human justice and turn it into a predictable algorithm. Every time a suit speaks, you can feel the weight of 1,000 lives being dismissed as statistical noise. It's a study in the dehumanization of power, a place where the spark of empathy is treated like a virus that needs to be purged from the system before the next quarterly report. There's a moment near the end where the machine is finally broken, leaning against the hull of a car. And the texture of that scene tells a deeper story than any dialogue could. We've spent the whole movie looking at this invincible titan of chrome, this walking tank that laughs at lead. But here in the quiet, the chrome is scratched, the hydraulics are whining with a metallic fatigue, and the fluid leaking onto the pavement looks dangerously like blood. The machine is at its most fragile, and the director uses the car as a crutch to show us that even the future has a breaking point. The vibe is one of exhausted legacy. Murphy isn't just a cop anymore. He's a ghost inhabiting a damaged shell, and the weight of that metal must feel like a mountain on his chest. This isn't the glorious victory of a superhero. It's the ragged, desperate survival of a man who's been hollowed out, rebuilt until there's nothing left but the will to finish the job. The choice to keep the lighting low, reflecting off the dented surfaces of the machine and the car, creates a shadow play that emphasizes the isolation of the hero. He is alone in a way that no human can truly understand, trapped in a body that won't let him die, but won't let him live either. It's a visceral reminder of the burden of being perfect. Once you're dented, you're just scrap metal waiting for the incinerator. The metamorphosis, the actual physical transition from Alex Murphy to the machine, is a sequence that feels like a ritualistic sacrifice disguised as a medical miracle. This wasn't a save, it was a salvage operation. We see the removal of the organic, the literal cutting away of the man to make room for the batteries and the wiring. The vibe is clinical horror. The choice to keep the shots tight on the mechanical arms and the flickering monitors makes the viewer feel like a witness to a crime against nature. OCP didn't just fix Murphy. They colonized him. They took the spark of his life and used it as a pilot light for a weapon. There's a heavy, rhythmic thud to the machinery in this sequence, the sound of a new heart being forged in a corporate furnace. The irony is that while the technicians celebrate the success of the build, we are watching the burial of a father and a husband. The weight of the scene comes from the silence of Murphy himself. He has no voice in his own rebirth. He is a passenger in a body that is being bolted together around him. This is where the story architect proves that the real monster isn't the criminal with the gun, but the scientist with the scalpel, who sees a human life as a collection of spare parts. It's a cold, hard look at the price of progress, a reminder that to build the perfect tool, you often have to destroy the perfect man. Watch the way Anne Lewis moves through the grime of the precinct, trying to find a trace of her partner in the cold stare of the machine. She's the only one who refuses to see the product. To her, the weight of the armor doesn't hide the ghost underneath. Her presence is a constant irritation to the corporate narrative because she keeps trying to rehumanize an asset that OCP wants to remain a tool. The vibe of their interactions is one of profound, unspoken grief. She looks for the spark in his mechanical eyes, searching for a flicker of recognition that isn't programmed into the HUD. The director uses Lewis as our emotional anchor, the person who remembers the texture of the man before he was replaced by chrome. Her loyalty is a mistake in the eyes of the executives, a variable they didn't account for in their spreadsheets. The irony is that the more they try to isolate the machine, the more Lewis' simple, human persistence pulls him back toward the truth. She isn't just a partner, she's a reminder of a life that OCP decided was over. Every time she speaks his name, it's like a hammer hitting a crack in the armor, a small, defiant act of rebellion against a system that wants to own the very memory of Alex Murphy. Ta-da! When Clarence Boddicker finally falls, it's not a moment of cinematic triumph, it's a messy, industrial collision of two different kinds of predators. The vibe of the defeat is one of absolute terror meeting absolute indifference. Boddicker is a man who ruled through chaos and loud violence, but against the silent hydraulic momentum of the machine. He's just a panicked animal. The irony is that even at the moment of victory, Murphy is still a prisoner. He wants to deliver the final blow, to feel the rhythm of vengeance, but the directives act like a digital leash. He has to process the choice through a filter of corporate legality. The director sets this defeat in the grime of a factory, a place where the air is thick with the shadow of industrial decay, emphasizing that this isn't a battle of good versus evil, it's a battle of the old rot versus the new rot. The way the machine looms over the broken man is a visual study in the shifting of power. Boddicker thought he was the master of the city, but he was just a stray dog in the yard of a mega-corporation. The result is a cold, mechanical delivery of justice that feels less like a moral victory and more like the inevitable crushing of a bug by a larger, more efficient machine. Then there's the old man, the dreamer in the high tower, surrounded by a solitude that costs more than a small country. He sits in his office, and the vibe is one of a god who has realized his creation is a disaster, but still wants to charge admission. The weight of his position is visible in every slow, deliberate movement. He talks about old Detroit as if it's a sketch on a napkin that he's ready to crumble up and throw away. The irony of the old man is his perceived innocence. He isn't the one pulling the triggers or screaming in the streets, but every choice he makes from that high-altitude sanctuary sends a ripple of violence through the world below. The director keeps the office quiet, almost sterile, to contrast with the loud, dirty reality of the city. He is the ghost of a vision that has already failed, a man who built a cage and called it a utopia. His solitude isn't a sign of peace, it's a sign of total disconnection. He owns the air, but he doesn't know what it's like to breathe the smoke of the streets. He's the ultimate architect of the nightmare, a person who treats the destruction of a human life like a minor mistake in a grand design. The execution of the final direct order, the moment where the machine is allowed to fire on its own creator, is a masterclass in cinematic irony and legal gymnastics. We've been waiting for the spark of justice for 90 minutes, but it can only happen once a human resources protocol is completed. The vibe of that boardroom becomes electric the moment the words "you're fired" are spoken. In that second, the shadow of the corporation is lifted, and the machine is given a permit to act like a man. The director makes the execution quick, violent, and jarringly efficient. There is no slow-motion grace here, it's just the rhythm of a weapon doing what it was built to do. The fall of Dick Jones through that glass window is the visual representation of a corporate empire shattering. But the real weight is in the silence that follows. The machine has cleared the room, but it hasn't cleared its soul. It had to wait for a loophole to do the right thing, which is the most biting satire in the entire film. It shows us that in this world, even your most profound moral choices are subject to the approval of a supervisor. The direct execution is a successful product demonstration, and the horror of that realization is what lingers long after the glass stops falling. What? Finally, look at the nightmares in the rack, the fragmented flashes of memory that feel like a system glitch but are actually the ghost refusing to be deleted. When Murphy is hooked up to that maintenance chair, he's at his most vulnerable, a piece of hardware undergoing a tactical audit. But the texture of his dreams is grainy, distorted, and violently human. He isn't dreaming of data. He's dreaming of the shadows of his wife and the spark of his son's laughter. The irony is that the very technology meant to make him a perfect lawman, the high-definition recorders and AWOL, the perfect data retrieval, is what's keeping his trauma alive. He can't forget because his hardware won't let him. The vibe of the dream sequence is a frantic, desperate search for identity in a sea of static. The director uses these nightmares to show us that trauma is a burden that code can't overwrite. Every flash of Bodeker's face is a reminder that the man who died in the warehouse is still screaming inside the chrome. The maintenance rack, with its cold metal clamps and glowing lights, looks like a cage for a soul that just wants to go home. It's the ultimate moral flip. The machine is suffering because it's becoming more human, while the humans around it have become as cold as machines. In the belly of that OCP tower, the air is filtered to the point of being sterile, a direct contrast to the greasy, unwashed reality of the city below. When we look at the boardroom again, it's impossible not to notice the texture of the power on display. These aren't just men. They are a collective weight pressing down on the neck of Detroit. They talk about Delta City with a religious fervor, but it's a faith built on the erasure of history. The irony of their plan is that they are trying to build a heaven by turning the world into a hell. The director frames these executives in wide, imposing shots, making them look like giants, but their conversation reveals them to be small, petty men obsessed with the rhythm of the stock ticker. The vibe is one of absolute deceptive calm. They are designing a future where you don't need a police force because the city itself is a prison. This is where the story architect shows us the blueprint for the apocalypse. It's not an explosion, it's a series of meetings where empathy is traded for efficiency. Every time the old man smiles, you should feel a mistake being written into the social contract, a hidden directive that says the corporation is more important than the citizen. Go back to that moment where Murphy is broken near the car. The rain is coming down, and it's not the cleansing rain of a hero's journey. It's the acidic, industrial rain of a world that's given up. The texture of the dented metal on his arm, reflecting the harsh blue light of the sirens, tells us everything we need to know about the burden of his existence. He is a masterpiece that has been discarded. The vibe is one of a wounded predator realizing it has no home to go to. The car, symbol of American industrial might, is just as battered and broken as he is. There's a profound shadow cast over the scene, a feeling that the battle might be won, but the war for the soul of the city is already lost. The choice to focus on the mechanical whir of his sensors as they struggle to focus in the dark emphasizes his isolation. He is a ghost in a dying machine, looking at a city that doesn't recognize him. The result is a scene that feels like a funeral for the American dream, conducted in an alleyway by a man who isn't allowed to cry. Manuel. The metamorphosis sequence is where the vibe of the film shifts from tragedy to cold, clinical horror. We see the surgeons, or rather, the technicians, treating Murphy's body like a damaged chassis. There's zero spark of humanity in their eyes. They are focused on the rhythm of the assembly line. The choice to show the arm being removed, not because it was beyond saving, but because the mechanical version was more efficient, is a chilling commentary on the corporate view of the human body. It's an asset to be stripped for parts. The irony is that as they build the hero, they are systematically destroying the man. The weight of the metal being bolted to his bone is something we are forced to feel through the sound design. The sharp, piercing texture of the drills and the heavy clank of the armor plates. This is the birth of the directives. The moment the code is etched into his very being. The result is a creature that is all cop, but the burden of that creation is carried entirely by the ghost of Alex Murphy. It's a baptism in oil and electricity, a transformation that leaves the world with a savior and a widow with a memory. Lewis is the only thing that keeps this movie from being a total descent into nihilism. When she looks at the machine and sees her partner, she's providing the spark that the OCP tower lacks. The vibe of their partnership is built on the texture of shared history, something that can't be stored in a database. The director uses their scenes together to show the weight of human connection in a world that has privatized friendship. When she helps him with his sensors, it's not a tactical act. It's an act of grace. The irony is that the perfect machine is only functional when it's being guided by a flawed human. The burden of her knowledge that Murphy is still in there is what drives her to risk everything. She is the ghost in the system, the person who refuses to let the corporate narrative become the only truth. Their connection is the spark that eventually ignites the rebellion. Without Lewis, Murphy is just a very expensive toaster. With her, he is a man reclaiming his name. The result is a partnership that proves the rhythm of the heart is stronger than the rhythm of the code. The defeat of Boddicker is a brutal, unwashed sequence that strips the vibe of the action movie down to its predatory core. This is where the machine finally corners the man who broke him. The setting, the white, dusty cocaine factory, creates a high-contrast texture that makes the blood look even darker. Boddicker is frantic. His rhythm is chaotic and desperate, while Murphy moves with the terrifying hydraulic calm of a landslide. The irony is that Boddicker thinks he can negotiate, that his choices still matter, but he's facing a force of nature that has been programmed to ignore his excuses. The weight of the confrontation is in the silence of the machine. Murphy doesn't need to shout. His very existence is an indictment of Boddicker's cruelty. The shadow of the factory looms over them, a graveyard of the industrial age, where the old kind of criminal is being executed by the new kind of law. The result is a moment of visceral satisfaction that is immediately poisoned by the realization that Murphy is still just a tool. He wins the fight, but he still has to read the rights to a man who shouldn't have any. It's a direct hit to the viewer's sense of justice, a reminder that the machine is both the executioner and the prisoner. Whoa. The old man's solitude is the most deceptive thing in the movie. He looks like a kindly grandfather, a man of great legacy and vision, but his silence is the silence of an accomplice. The vibe of his office is one of total insulation from the consequences of his choices. He is the architect of a world he never has to visit. The director uses the texture of the high-rise view to show how small the people of Detroit look to the men at the top. They aren't humans, they are situations to be managed. The irony of his character is that he seems to genuinely believe he is the hero of the story, the man who will save the city through the rhythm of the free market. The weight of his arrogance is staggering. He is the person who approved the metamorphosis of Murphy, yet he acts as if he's just a casual observer of the result. His solitude is a sanctuary of denial. The result is a character who represents the moral flip at the heart of the corporate world. The people who do the most damage are the ones who never have to get their hands dirty. He is the ghost of a dying era, presiding over a company that has replaced the soul with a spreadsheet. No. What? The direct execution of the final order is a ritual of cleansing that happens in the most sterile environment imaginable. The vibe of the OCP boardroom is shattered by the rhythm of the gunfire. The director uses the texture of the shattering glass to represent the end of the corporate facade. For a brief second, the spark of human justice is allowed to override the shadow of corporate policy. The irony is that it takes a firing, a literal termination of employment, to allow the termination of a life. It's a biting commentary on the burden of modern existence. We are only allowed to be human when the paperwork is in order. The weight of the moment is in the old man's reaction. He isn't horrified. He's impressed by the performance of the product. The result is a victory that feels profoundly hollow. Jones is dead. The directives are satisfied. But the system that created the monster is still standing. The machine has its name back, but it's still wearing the company's logo. It's a choice that leads to a moment of reclaimed identity. But the texture of the world is still just as gray and cold as it was when the movie started. Finally, the nightmares in the rack are the spark of the entire narrative arc. They are the visual proof that the ghost can't be buried in chrome. The vibe of these sequences is one of pure, unadulterated trauma. The director uses the texture of the distorted video to show us how Murphy is processing his own death. It's not a memory, it's a burden that he carries in every hydraulic line. The irony is that the very directives meant to make him a perfect lawman are what make him a tormented soul. He has to protect the innocent, but he couldn't protect himself. The rhythm of his dreams is the rhythm of the shotgun blasts that killed him. This is where the character philosopher takes over, showing us that identity isn't something you can program. It's something that's etched into the spark of your consciousness. The nightmares are his act of defiance, his refusal to be just an asset. The result is a man who is waking up in a world that doesn't want him to remember. He is a detective on the trail of his own life, and the rack is the only place where the ghost can finally speak. It's the most vulnerable part of the film, a reminder that under all that heavy-duty hardware, there is still a heart that refuses to stop hurting.